Hi, this is Rajan. Welcome to another podcast on AI and young achievers who have created that path. Utkalika Mahanti, Digital Transformation Director, London Stock Exchange Group. He has a diverse experience of about 13 plus years in strategy, consulting, operations management, and of course the digital transformation. He holds an MBA from IIMB. She was a former VP of Global Operation at Genpact and Head of New Products Pricing and Digital Transformation at PK Birla Group. And Utkalika, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Satya. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
So we'll get on some teasers. I really loved a recent story about you sharing about you have to explain your work trip to your 4-year-old daughter, calling it your mic activity. You mentioned that thinking about how to explain AI to her completely shifted your perspective on explainability in tech. Can you share that story for our listeners and how to change your approach on communicating complex technical topics like Gen AI to the executives and regulators?
I'm smiling because this is a personal story, but happy to share that. So I am glad that this story resonated. So this happened one morning when I was leaving for a conference in Singapore to speak there. So and my 4-year-old asked, and she often does, Mama, why are you traveling again? Now at her play school, anytime they have a small presentation or speak on stage, they call it a mic activity. So it's a term she is really familiar with. So I picked that on purpose and said, I'm going for my mic activity because I was supposed to speak in the conference. So she immediately got curious and asked, what mic activity? And then I thought, oh, it's settling down and, she is liking it and she is interested in it. And that's when it hit me. If I'm choosing her language to explain my work, then I should be able to explain something as complex as AI in the same way. I mean, that was a trigger for me. So I told her, you know what? When you do your mic activity, you talk and people listen. So Mama helps grown-ups use a very smart computer that listens to questions and helps them find answers, but only the right ones and only when it is safe. And she got it. She's like, okay, the computer answers and answers the right thing and it's safe. And I'm like, okay. I mean, she got it. So that simple exchange kind of completely changed how I think about explainability. So I stopped seeing it as a technical requirement and started seeing it as an act of translation and trust. So today, when I speak to stakeholders or at any forum for that matter, I don't lead with how powerful Gen AI is. I talk about what decision it's influencing, what judgment must always stay with humans, such human nuanced view towards technology. So that little mic activity moment reminded me that if we cannot explain tech or AI for that matter in familiar human terms, we probably should not be deploying it yet because people would not get it. And I still use my daughter as a test platform. So if it makes sense to her in her world, and I'm probably on the right track. So I use the same language to explain others also. So she's my test platform.
Okay.
That's how the story goes.
And you are her mic. Good. Nice to hear that when we go high tech, explaining it to a common man or woman makes all the sense, and even more to people who have rich amount of experience but getting used to the latest and the greatest that is sweeping under their feet. That's a great way to kind of look at it.
Right.
I pretty well know that you had a broad career over 13 years, starting from roles such as system engineers at Infosys to leading a large-scale digital transformation and P&Ls at companies like Genpact and PK Birla Group. You also recently hosted a session on, what do you say, turning insight into a foresight, the power of post-delivery analysis, and looking back at your own career transition, right from, let's say, an engineering to an MBA at IIMB to strategy and operations. What is one piece of hindsight that you have really turned into a foresight for your leadership style today?
Thank you for that question. It helps me reflect on my career and journey. As I speak, I realize I've completed 14 years, but I don't know if number really matters. It is a experience what you carry forward. Number is just a part of the whole thing in how I see it to be. Having said that, when I look back across my career transition, so from engineering to an MBA and then into strategy, operation, and eventually P&L roles, the biggest hindsight for me is this. So in my early years when I was starting out, success was very delivery driven. What does that mean? So if a system went live, if a transformation was completed on time, if the efficiency number looked good, I felt like a win because the delivery was happening, right? And in the professional service, that mindset works for a while and it worked for me as well. But once I started owning P&Ls and running businesses, I realized that delivery metrics don't always translate to value. So sometimes you can deliver exactly what was asked for or what was expected and still create downstream risk or maybe hidden costs or operational fragility, for that matter, adoption failure in terms of digital context, or decision making become overly dependent on automation. So these are things which I have seen maybe fundamentally happening even if you have delivered something really great. So that hindsight fundamentally shaped my foresight as a leader. Today, I never look at a transformation purely through a did it work lens. That means did the transformation work? That's one kind of lens, and I don't look at it that way these days. I look at it through questions like what risk did this reduce or introduce? What judgment are we automating? What must remain human? And how will this decision age over the next few years? That means 2, 3, 5 years maybe. This is where post-delivery reflection became critical to me. In PNL roles, customer trust, resilience, margin matter more than perfect execution. So reflecting after delivery helps convert one-time success into repeatable value. So how do you replicate it again and again? That's something I definitely learned. And it helps avoid costly repeat mistake. I call them costly repeat mistake because if you're not reflecting and not learning, you may end up having those costly repeat mistakes. So as a leader today, that foresight kind of shows up in how I guide teams. I encourage them to look beyond quick wins and think about the longer term impact. So because in business, risks don't disappear. They just show up later as costs. So that single hindsight that delivery alone isn't value has become foresight for my leadership today. So it's how I balance growth, risk, sustainability in every decision I take. For now, I focus on all other things, not only delivery alone. So that long-term view has shaped my foresight right now, leadership style, Satya, if that made sense.
That's a great way to explain. KPIs do produce results, but does it really impact and create value for the customer? And one more thing I really like was risk doesn't disappear and it comes in different dress in the form of a cost. So that's a great way to kind of not look at KPIs, but ultimate goals and their achievements in a longer vision. That is a great journey. That's a great journey.
Thank you, Satya. Thank you. These are small learnings which I think I take forward.
Very true, very true. And it's a summary of what you have experienced and learned through the ages, which somebody listening to this podcast would have like an instant knowledge at their hand. That's a great way to explain things to a kid, all the way to explaining self on what is the foresight. And now let's talk about how do you carry forward these learnings to something that you can influence and have people not do the same repeat errors while doing either digital transformation or AI. So let's ponder over that for a while. You've spoken passionately about influencing without a title. I read through some of yours. And the importance of not just a title, but also the importance of empathy as a power tool in leadership, right? You noted that empathy lowers defenses and gets decisions unstuck. In the high-stakes world of digital transformation and operations, how do you practically apply empathy to drive change, especially when dealing with persisting or differing opinions?
Thank you for asking that question, Satya. So this is something which I definitely feel is very important in a very high-stake environment, and it is more talked about than practiced. So empathy is something which I keep hearing people talk about it, but very often don't see it to be practicing in real life. And maybe in next few minutes, if I can explain how do I see it, possibly I would be able to help you more practice the same. So for me, empathy in leadership isn't about agreeable or avoiding hard conversations. It's about understanding why someone is resistant before trying to move them. So, in digital transformation specifically and operations, resistance is rarely about the technology itself. It's usually about fear and human fear of losing control, fear of being exposed, workflow changing, or of accountability increasing. Maybe my work will increase. If you miss that human nuance, no amount of authority or logic helps. So, practically, when I sense resistance, my first move isn't to persuade, it's to actually listen. I ask questions like, what would make this easy for you? What feels risky about this change from where you see? Is there anything what we can do to make things easier for you? And that alone lower defenses because people feel seen rather than overruled. A lot of time in the corporate structure, they feel that somebody is overruling their decisions or their workspace. So empathy also helps get decision unstuck. So many stalemates happen because people are protecting different things. And it's just natural as human. One person may be protecting risk, another is protecting speed, someone else is protecting their team. Once you surface this openly like an honest conversation, the conversation shifts from opinion to trade-off. So they actually understand that what they're protecting and what is at larger benefit. So, and finally, empathy helps me influence without a title when people realize you are not pushing an agenda. And typically, most people perceive saying that, oh, possibly you have a work agenda and hence you are approaching. But genuinely, if I try to balance outcome with impact on them, I keep listening to them, they're far more willing to move, even if they do not fully agree. So a lot of time people don't agree with you, but they understand your point because you're kind of empathizing with their situation. So in high-stake environments, empathy isn't a soft skill anymore. That's why I started saying that it's very, very important. It's a practical leadership tool. So that accelerates alignments, it reduces friction, it helps change actually, it makes change stick. That means you are creating some change management, which is long term. So empathy does matter a lot, and I have seen the real implication in a very, very high stake environment, Satya.
That's good. So from guarding a point of view or a team or a perspective, they actually kind of with empathy they open up and then they see what are all the trade-offs, right?
Yeah, that's very human. I mean, it's not something which people do unnecessarily. It's a very human response to most of the things in the corporate world.
Very true. So right from explaining to a kid to the learnings that you can implement to making sure others also are on the journey trying to contribute their best. Sometimes you also have this extra challenge in the current world. Things have changed for better. Being a woman amidst all those conversations, nobody else other than you to kind of talk about that front. And I remember that on a Women's Day, you shared a powerful reflection about growing up in a small town in Odisha, wrestling with English and being told to speak louder so that your opinions matter and people hear and things like that. You said strong voices aren't born, they are built brick by brick. For the women listening who might feel their voices too soft to be heard in a corporate environment, what practical steps did you take to build your voice and step into this enterprise-wide leadership? So, any suggestions there for women out there?
So, again, that's a very personal take on things, but possibly happy to share this if it inspire a few people. I shared it in public for two reasons. One, somewhere I heard that if you talk about things in public and especially around your fear, you get rid of them at some level of subconscious. And that was my first intention, that when you go out in public, you kind of get freed from those fears. Second was obviously the question which you asked, and maybe in the similar line, saying that if somebody can resonate with that journey and can pick up things and possibly can get inspired over the period of time, that'll be a small win for me. And that's why I shared. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about that in terms of what I went through. So, and that reflection came purely from personal experience. So, I grew up in a small town in Odisha, and English wasn't the first language. So, and obviously I wasn't confident in. So when you grow up with your mother tongue, I don't know if it's still my strength or not. I'm still learning every day and maybe fine tuning the language aspect of it. I was often told to speak louder. That's again a human, maybe a woman thing, saying that a lady generally speak to people with poise, grace. I mean, the softness comes naturally. You have been trained that way. People always ask you, saying that, can you lower your voice? Can you tone down? Can you speak softer? So these are things kind of imprints in your mind for a long period of time. But what I slowly realized is that volume isn't confidence. So for a long period of time, I was worried that I'm not heard, people are not listening to me, I'm not understood. But then I realized volume isn't really confidence. Clarity is. On the other hand, if you have clarity, that shows up in confidence. So one practical step which I took early was preparation. I'm always prepared, like to be honest. I prepare sometimes I prepare a lot, maybe not so much which is necessary, but I made sure that I was always clear on my point of view before I walked into a room. So when you're clear, your voice naturally strengthens, even if it is soft. Maybe I'm coming across naturally strong right now because I have a clear point of view on this. Second, I learned to anchor my voice, not opinion. So the voice is around outcomes more. Instead of saying what I felt, I learned to say what the data, risk, or impact showed. That shift helped me heard an enterprise level conversation. And I finally stopped trying to sound like everyone else. Your voice doesn't have to be loud or dominant to be strong, which I perceived that this is how the world should work. It has to be actually authentic and consistent, which I tried, and that comes naturally to me being very, very authentic. So strong voices, which I spoke about, are built brick by brick. Every time you speak up, ask a question, or share a perspective, even when it feels uncomfortable. There are a lot of time it is uncomfortable for you, it is uncomfortable for other people also. But you are laying another brick. It always starts there with the first brick and then the brick by brick. So it's about clarity, it's about your strong perspective, and you do not have to be loud and dominant. You just have to be authentic and consistent. So yeah, that's what at least I have learned so far around my voice and how I can possibly inspire others.
That's a great way to say. In this data world, decibels do matter, but even more matters is the clarity. And that once you have the clarity, that brings in confidence in you and the data that is backing you up. So that's a great way of explaining things to our audience. Definitely, there will be many women who will be inspired by this version of your loudness called decibelometer.
Decibelometer, I like the word. I'll take that with me. The decibel doesn't have to be higher.
Yes. Sure. So moving from data to AI world and future of work, we see the global capability centers naturally choosing certain countries or spots. And then you recently moderated a panel at IIMB on the future of this global capability centers, arguing that the name no longer does justice to the work being done here, that these centers are now steering strategy and innovation, not just supporting it. As someone deeply involved in the AI and digital transformation side of the work, how do you see the role of these centers evolving in the next 3 to 5 years, particularly with the integration of the Gen AI?
That's an interesting question. And I think I picked up few perspectives along the way when I heard multiple leaders around GCCs, how they're shaping, what kind of work they're doing. And these are perspectives which have formed over the period of time, while I currently work in a global capability center setup. So that's how it is for me. But if my personal opinion strikes, I genuinely believe that Global Capability Center is already outdated, and that might create some friction. People might be thinking, oh, there's so many GCCs lining up. How can you say that it is already outdated? But what I am seeing today, at least, especially in India, are the centers shaping strategy, not just supporting it. So previously, the Global Capability Center had this view that they're supporting things, but now I see people playing a central part to creating or shaping strategy. Over the next 3 to 5 years, how I see it, Gen AI will accelerate that shift even further. So routine execution and reporting kind of work will increasingly be automated. So which definitely frees up the centers to focus on higher order work. What do I mean by higher order work? Maybe decision support, scenario modeling, innovation, enterprise problem solving, which you may or may not be a part of at this point in time. That also means the talent profile will change. So from execution heavy roles to people who combine business judgment, data literacy, and AI fluency, they will be picked up. So what really changes with Gen AI is the proximity to decisions. And GCCs will move closer to where complex calls are made around risk, resilience, customer experience, and growth. If you're making complex calls, I'm sure GCCs will move closer to that. Maybe not all the GCCs are currently playing a central part to that. And they will definitely influence outcomes earlier, not after the fact. Now it is a lot of post-mortem, post-delivery and all of it. But in next few years, I see a shift in terms of influencing outcomes earlier. So of course, this shift depends on trust and governance. So scale alone won't create value anymore. So we were thriving on scale for quite some time and it'll definitely be there for some more time. But the shift will depend on how much trust and governance are we gonna enforce in this scenario so that we shift smoothly towards to being in the center of the strategy making or creating strategies for center. So I see the future of GCCs not as a back-end capability center, but I think it has already moved to some distance. It's no more a back-end capability center. But for me, it will be a strategic nerve center. I call it as a neural center where technology, talent, and judgment come together and help enterprise navigate increasing complexity. And think we in company also are playing to a large role in that aspect. So we definitely are moving in that direction. So in 5 years down, I see the GCCs to be the strategic neural center, how I see Satya.
That's even more what I say. Global capability centers are too late to arrive here. We are far ahead. And with the advent of Gen AI and other, the bottom of the pyramid where more of execution will be automated and then people will be moving towards decision making, being literate about AI and stuff like that. So from the talent side, also it marks a phenomenal shift in what we deliver, not just the operations. That's a great way of looking at Gen AI because everyone is worried about Gen AI taking out their jobs. No, it is escalating you to a different level of job. That's well said. And that's
you're going to play a part in the higher order than actually doing the execution oriented work because the machine is going to take care of that.
That's great. That's great. So for all people out there who are nervous about the new nervous system, which is Gen AI, don't worry, you will lose something, but you will be put to the higher order talent and the jobs there. Now, if everything can be automated, what is left behind is philosophy. That's how I would see. All tasks are taken out from us. What do we imagine our future work? And how do we look at ourselves in the context of job as a means to an end to what we can do? So the evolving purpose and the final question for you is that we always like to end with a look at the larger picture, right? You discuss how purpose is never static. It evolves from learning in our early part of the careers to deepening as we kind of go through this journey of leading teams and also shifting with personal milestones like becoming a parent, because those also kind of, close over to what we do in our professional work. As we juggle being the director of digital transformation, deputy director of the alumni network at IIMB and a mother, what does your purpose look like right now, and how do you ensure you stay true to your values amidst those constant changes, be it AI or any other thing?
Well, thank you for asking that question. Again, it helps me reflect a bit in terms of how my life has been, leading in the right path or not. And that's something which I do very often, I think possibly every day. That's how I'll put at it. Aligned to values, that has been always a constant. I stayed true to my values. I kept being consistent with that at least. Whenever something fell off, I possibly didn't pursue that. And that shaped me as an individual as well. Right, wrong, I don't know. But yeah, I stayed true to my values. At times it is conflicting with others. At times it is conflicting with organizations, depending on where I stand. But at that stage of my life, you spoke about I've traveled 14 years into the career journey. At this stage of my life, purpose feels both clearer and more grounded than ever. So I can see it more clear now, and then, it is much more grounded. Earlier in my career, when I was starting, maybe purpose was about learning, growth, and you'll find it funny that one of my purpose was to proving myself also, which I got rid of over the period of time. But that also came as a purpose for me sometime it served me also. I have possibly proven in few platforms. But as I took on leadership roles, it evolved into nurturing people, building teams, shaping outcomes, creating impact at a large scale. These are something which evolved with my leadership roles. Right now, my purpose sits in the intersection of all the roles which you explained. So you mentioned saying that I play as a transformation leader. I'm part of the I'm Bangalore Alumni Committee. I'm a mother. So my purpose now is at the intersection of all those roles which I play. So at its core though, it's about building things that last. You call it systems, capabilities, people. I look at it if I'm building things that would last while doing it responsibly and with integrity. That's my purpose, is how I see it to be. Becoming a parent has reinforced that for me, to be honest. It made me think more deeply about the kind of decisions we make today and the world they eventually shape, because my kid would be part of that world, right? So now I'm more empathetic about what kind of decision I'm making. It's not just about speed or innovation anymore, but more about trust, inclusion, long term value, because I'm creating or building things that should last. The way I say true to my value mindset, constant change is by regularly stepping back and asking a very simple question. That's why I started saying that I do it, I think, every day, saying, does this decision align with who I want to be? Not just what I want to achieve. Previously, it used to be what I want to achieve. Now it is more in terms of who I want to be. And purpose for me isn't fixed, and it evolves, and it has evolved so far. But the anchor stayed the same. And the anchor for me had been always lead with clarity, which I spoke about, act with empathy, which I again spoke about, and leave things better than you found them. And that's something which I'm on right now, building things that last. Satya, that's how my purpose I have defined for life from here
So
on.
from the personal values that last to leaving a value that lasts across generations is a very great, not just an ambition, but a value system that you have constantly trying to make it clear. And if I count the number of words that you would have used, repeat clarity comes very, very clear out there. And so a lot of things got cleared during the discussion in a fast moving AI world. And for people out there, you can follow Utkalika on her LinkedIn and interact and take forward the conversation. And definitely it will be of an inspiration one. And until we meet the next time on another podcast on another AI topic, combining purpose, life, skills, and AI of the future. Thanks for carrying out this episode and thanks for this great discussion.
Thank you, Satya, for having me. While I lead and thrive in the machine world, but I still enjoy the human conversations always. And I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Really, really appreciate for having me. Thank you so much.
Thanks.